Welcome back to the Shine Within podcast. Sarah Rusbatch is the author of the best-selling book Beyond Booze: How to Create a Life and Love Alcohol-Free, and a multi-award-winning health and well-being coach. She is an accredited gray area drinking coach, menopause coach, and keynote speaker, sharing her journey to sobriety and the impact of alcohol on mental health and with global audiences. Since removing alcohol from her life in 2019, Sarah has dedicated herself to empowering women worldwide to break free from unhealthy habits, reclaim their health, and live their best lives. Through her online community, the Women's Wellbeing Collective, she provides a supportive space and real life tools to guide women towards lasting freedom and happiness. It is 8 p.m. for me, so I apologize if I'm stumbling on words. So, thank you so much, Sarah, for being on my show today. I'm excited to speak with you.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for doing it so late at night for you as well.
No problem. I hear my husband in the background. I'm getting distracted too because he has a work meeting and I hear I'm like, oh no, even with headphones because he talks so loud. So it's funny. Thank you for actually joining me today. Let's go ahead and let's just start off by you sharing with us what led you to identify as a gray area drinker and what prompted you to your decision to give up alcohol completely in 2019.
Yeah. So I started drinking at 14, which was pretty standard for me. I grew up in the north of England and alcohol was kind of everywhere. And this was, also back at a time where alcohol use amongst women was starting to increase. It was that real girl power time. It was that real time of the girls can have it all. Sex in the City was out there. There was female independence and empowerment. And it was a time where women were really starting to take control of their lives in a way that I don't think really had been seen in quite that same way before. But with that came this real ladette culture of we can match the boys pint for pint down the pub, we can drink as much as the boys, we're earning our own money, we don't need men to buy us drinks, we can do it ourselves. And there was this real movement at the time. And so I grew up in an era where alcohol was very present. It was very expected. It was how you socialized. It was, fast forward, went to university and then I moved to London, and alcohol was a very big part of my life. But it had never been problematic. I just saw myself as a big drinker. That was something that was celebrated in my circle. It was something that I wore as a badge of honor, that I had a high capacity for alcohol, that I could drink a huge amount and didn't really get hangovers, was still able to function the next day, would think nothing. In my 20s, I was working in London. You'd go out, you'd go clubbing, you'd get home at 3 a.m., you'd get up at 7, you'd go to work, you'd work a 10-hour day, and then you'd go and do it all again. And it was just that work hard, play hard culture that was very, very present at the time. For me, things really changed after I had got married and had my first child. And then we made the decision to move to Australia. And I got pregnant again very quickly after my first. And so I had two kids under two. I was suddenly on the other side of the world from my security, my stability, the people that I knew inside out. Like I had no friends, that everyone I was meeting were new people. I had no family. I was suddenly a stay-at-home mum with two very demanding, quite active, young children. And I wasn't working anymore, whereas I used to get a huge sense of identity from my career, and I've been very successful. And so there was just a lot of things going on. I was really homesick. I was really, really homesick. But on paper, I couldn't understand it, because it was like on paper, it looked like I had everything. We'd moved to Australia. We lived by the beach. We had a beautiful place where we lived. I didn't have to work because we'd saved enough money that I could take a couple of years off to be with the kids. So on paper, it all looked perfect. But inside, I was feeling really confused, and I was turning more and more to alcohol as a way to make those feelings go away. And I didn't know it at the time, but more and more it became the thing that I was looking forward to. It was, 3 o'clock, and I'd be thinking, oh, at 5 o'clock, I'll pour a glass of wine, and just starting to rely more and more on that 5 o'clock wine. And And that carried on for a few years. And again, wasn't hugely problematic. Wasn't at the point where anyone was saying to me, oh, you're drinking, is a problem, Sarah, because I very rarely got to the point where I was so drunk that I was losing my senses or anything. It was just this continuous reliance on alcohol. And then when I got into my 40s, it really started to impact me in a more negative way. So that was when I started noticing that alcohol was impacting my mental health, that my anxiety was increasing, that my sleep was being disturbed every time I drank. I was putting on weight and I was struggling to shift it. I was tired all the time. I was feeling lethargic. I was feeling run down. I was constantly getting sick. And again, I didn't put any of it down to alcohol. And you do all the things. I was going to the gym and I was having my kale smoothies and I was taking all the supplements because I refused to accept that it was the alcohol, because society tells us you've only got a problem with alcohol if you fit that stereotype of someone that drinks every day, someone that drinks in the morning, someone whose drinking has got so bad they've lost their job or their relationships or their driving license or any of those things. And I didn't fit that criteria. And so therefore I was like, well, it can't be the alcohol that's the problem because I'm not that bad. But then a couple of things happened in 2017 that led to me taking my first break from alcohol. I just had a couple of parties I'd gone to. I got very drunk. I fell over. I cut my face. And I decided to take a break. And I was like, I'm just going to do 21 days off booze and I'll see how I feel. And I kept going because I just felt amazing. I couldn't believe the difference that I felt from taking this break. So I was going to do 21 days and I got to 100 days because I was like, wow. But then it was kind of like, well, I can't never drink again because that would just be weird because I'm Sarah the party girl. But I thought, oh, I'll go back to drinking and then I'll be able to moderate because I've just taken 100 days off. So I clearly don't have a problem. I just needed to have a little reset and now I'll just be a moderate drinker. But it didn't quite work like that. And before long, I was back to drinking the same amount as before. And then all the negative impacts came with that. And so finally in 2019, I had my last drink and then committed myself to what I wanted to do was make sure that I never felt like I had a less than life because I had removed alcohol. And in actual fact, I wanted to celebrate everything that life offered me because I wasn't drinking and all the things that I had to benefit from the fact that I wasn't hungover, tired, and relying on alcohol in the same way. And so that's been my journey. So now 5.5 years, and really just can't see that I would ever have any reason whatsoever to go back to adding alcohol into my life.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know you feel so much better without booze. Tell me. Oh. But for our audience who are unfamiliar with the term gray area drinking, how would you go ahead and define that? And why is it so important for people to recognize this pattern even in their own lives?
So, grey area drinking describes the place between every now and then drinking. So, someone that just has a glass of champagne once a year at a wedding, like doesn't even think about alcohol, and also the other extreme of people who are physically dependent on alcohol and need to have medical support to safely withdraw from alcohol. They're two ends of the scale. If we think about a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is the person who's hardly ever drinking, and 10 is the person who's physically dependent and needs medical support to stop. Grey area drinking is what's in the middle. So it's probably about a 4 to an 8 on that scale. So we've passed the point of being a take it or leave it drinker. We're not anymore someone who's just drinking every now and then, but nor are we physically dependent. We might take breaks from alcohol. We might not drink every day. We might sometimes be able to stop and sometimes not be able to stop. It's like we never quite know what we're going to get. And so the grey area describes that place in the middle. And actually, I think that's a really more dangerous place to be because we don't fit the criteria that society tells us is someone who has a problem with alcohol. So people stay in that grey area for a really, really, really long time, never quite knowing how amazing they would feel without alcohol in their life because they don't consider themselves bad enough to take it out.
That's right. Yeah. So I would fall under the severe category. I needed to be medically detoxed in order for me to then recover and say, okay, I'm done for good. But I did relapse many, 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 many times. So I fall in the severe category. But that's great that you actually work with people who recognize and have awareness, like, hey, I'm drinking more than I'm maybe supposed to. So that's awesome. I wish there was more of us out there to help those individuals who do need help, because AA didn't really work for me, to be honest with you. I tried that, but I didn't feel like I fit in. Because I didn't want to, even though I quit drinking and we go there and say, I am an alcoholic, I am powerless. I didn't want to say that. I just,
Yeah,
it didn't align to me. So I went a different path completely. That helped me. I had a mindset mentor and she was amazing. And she just helped me work from the inside out. And that's where we started,
yeah,
from the inside. Yeah,
fabulous.
but from your experience and research, what are some of the less obvious ways that alcohol affects our physical and also our mental well-being, even in small quantities?
Yeah, so we know that even like a glass of wine, for example, will impact your sleep. And so we have critical stages of sleep that we go through every night. Each sleep cycle is about 90 minutes. And we have light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep. And REM sleep is the stage of sleep associated with dreaming, but that's also where we regulate our emotions. So it's really important that we get that crucial stage of sleep in every sleep cycle. But we now know, studies have been done, when someone drinks alcohol, they actually don't go into REM sleep. So they go from light sleep to deep sleep and then to light sleep. And so a lot of people are missing out on this very critical stage of the sleep cycle, which is responsible for emotional regulation, as well as many other things. It's the stage of sleep responsible for actually preventing things like Alzheimer's and dementia and really supporting brain health. But I think the emotional regulation is key, because when we're not getting that REM sleep, we are less emotionally regulated. And then I think that drives us to reach for alcohol more, because we are feeling all over the place with our emotions, more sad, more stressed, more overwhelmed, all of those things. And so we get into that vicious cycle. So that's, one of the ways that alcohol really can impact sleep. Second thing is anxiety. So a lot of people drink because they're stressed and anxious without realizing that the alcohol is making them more anxious, because when we drink, our brain releases more of the stress hormone cortisol. And so, because we've got more of the stress hormone circulating around our body, we feel more stressed and anxious in general. And then that means that we're more likely to reach for alcohol as a way to relieve the stress, but it's been caused by alcohol in the first place. It can lead to, as we know, alcohol impacts the liver, but what a lot of women don't realize is that the body needs to detoxify estrogen. It needs to get estrogen out of the body, because an excess of estrogen leads to estrogen dominance and also can play a part in leading to hormone-related cancers such as breast cancer. And if the body is constantly having to process alcohol, it's not getting a chance to get to the estrogen, which then can lead to a buildup of circulating estrogen, which is not good for us as well. So there's lots of ways that, everyone thinks, oh, liver disease, or I might feel a bit nauseous, or I might put on weight. But there's actually a lot of other ways that alcohol really does impact us, both physically and emotionally.
Yes, I notice when I don't sleep, I am not good. So I remember all those times waking up feeling jittery, anxious. And it's so funny you bring that up about having anxiety and then going to the bottle to relieve our anxiety, but it actually creates more anxiety when we drink. I went through that cycle over and over and over again. And I have no anxiety anymore. I get like excited, nervous when something good is going to happen, or I'm like, all right, or I get to talk to Sarah today. Like I'm excited. I used to have so much anxiety, but yeah, when you let go of the alcohol, you will see the anxiety will just disappear. It dissolves. It's gone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally, totally.
Now, talking about culture and social pressures, our society often glorifies alcohol as a means of celebration. I mean, we have it everywhere. We have it at birthday parties, we have it at work functions. It's every liquor store has it, every 7 everywhere, right? How do you help women navigate the culture and social pressures around drinking?
Yeah, and it's a massive one. And, I have an entire chapter in my book on, so the book is called Beyond Booze, and it is available all over the world. So America, Canada, the UK, Australia. And there's a chapter on navigating social situations, because it's really important that we don't go, oh, I'm not drinking, so I can't ever have fun again, or I can't ever socialize again. But we just got to be more selective with what it is that we say yes to, how we want to spend our time, who we want to spend our time with. And so I will always, do a bit of an assessment if I'm invited to something. Well, do I want to go to that thing? Are they people that I really enjoy spending time with, regardless of not drinking? Is it something where everyone else's sole focus is just to go and get as drunk as possible? Because if it is, that's not going to be much fun for me if I'm not drinking and everyone else is just there to get drunk. So it's about assessing what those things are, but making sure that you are also adding in fun social things in your life that don't revolve around alcohol. So finding, new hobbies, new interests, going to theatre, going to comedy shows, doing, more movement, more exercise, taking up a creative hobby. Like there's lots of things out there that we can do when we take the alcohol out, but it's really important that we do something, because if we just sit at home and don't see anyone and don't go out, it's not going to be long before we're out drinking again, because we just feel like we're missing out. So it's really important that we're adding in other things to keep us interested and motivated, and so we're still doing things that we enjoy.
Yes, discovering our passions. That's what I loved. And even during that pause in 2020, that is really when I started discovering more of my passions. Yes, I was exercising a lot when I was early in my sobriety and, distracting myself so I wouldn't be thinking about drinking. But it wasn't really until I finally stopped and wasn't, we weren't working or anything. And I started learning different things that I enjoyed doing. I love cooking, and I felt that cooking was therapeutic for me. I love cooking. To this day, I cooked before Sarah, I only cooked top ramen and mac and cheese. I wasn't much of a cook, but I discovered a lot of the gifts that I now do to this day, and it's just amazing. And going out for hikes have really helped me, just ground me, and I just feel like I connect to my higher power that way too, and I get a lot of guidance that way. So it is really neat. You just discover stuff when you learn your passions and you start implementing fun things in your day. Yeah, and who you
Absolutely.
surround yourself with. Absolutely. Like that is very important. Like, yes, do I still have the same friends that I used to when I was drinking? Yes, but do I hang out with them? No. We chat from like social media, but it's just, they're at a different place. I'm in a different place, and we still support each other, on social media, like, hey, how you doing? How's it going? So we just build new relationships in this journey right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So you mentioned that before giving up alcohol, you felt disconnected from yourself and lacked inner resources. What inner resources did you discover, and how do they actually help you maintain an alcohol-free life?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me has been somatic work. So, in terms of learning how to regulate my nervous system, so that because, like I don't think there's many midlife women out there who are not stressed at some point, because, well, there's a couple of things that go on. Physiologically, we become more stressed and anxious anyway because the human body is producing less progesterone, and progesterone is the hormone that helps us feel calm and relaxed. So anyway, when we get into midlife, we're going to notice an increase in feeling overwhelmed, feeling anxious, ruminating thoughts, worrying about things that we may not have worried about before. And most of us have got stressful lives. We're working, we're raising kids, we might have elderly parents, we're running the home. There's lots of demands on us. So finding practices that have really supported me have included having a morning practice of some self-check-in, some journaling, some meditation and movement. Having some time through the day where I will just go and sit in the garden, do some grounding, put my bare feet on the earth, and maybe just look at the sun for a little while, and just have a moment of just self-connection. It doesn't have to be massive things, but it's just those pauses that you create in your day that just bring you back to yourself, and just being able to go, okay, how am I feeling? What's going on? Am I worried about anything? Like, we're so busy all the time that quite often we don't do that. And then it's been adding in things like breath work, yin yoga. I started working with a therapist and just starting like doing some talk therapy around consciously understanding some of the things that have been triggers in my life over the years. And so it's been like a really robust practice. But then also I love learning. I'm always listening to podcasts and reading books that really support that understanding of self and the things that really will help you to, because at the end of the day, what do we all want? We want to be content. We want to be happy. We want to be present in our life and enjoy the moments that we have. And so it's how do I create practices that support that? And it's not getting distracted with the things that take us away from that, like social media and scrolling on our phone and all of those things. So it's just being really mindful of what it is that works.
Yeah, this they say it's the scroll hole or something like that, where you're just going there and comparing yourself and doing all that. I mean, I love social media as a tool, but I was guilty of doing that too before. I was just like, oh, they're traveling. Why am I not there? It could be a dark place, that scroll hole. But many people actually feel that removing alcohol from their lives would is either too big or it's going to be too difficult for them. What advice would you go ahead and have for those who are afraid to take that first step?
Yeah, so I just say don't overthink it. Don't go, oh, it's going to be forever. Just start with a 30-day break. So I run women's programs 4 times a year for 30 days off alcohol. And over that time, I support every day to get through those 30 days and just start noticing the differences. What am I experiencing? Is my sleep better? Is my anxiety less? Am I feeling more connected to my kids? Am I feeling calmer? Have I got more energy? Like just see it as an experiment and just start with that 30-day experiment of how do I feel and what changes. And then at the end of that 30 days, okay, do I want to keep going for another 30 days? Like we don't have to overthink it and go, oh my God, I could never drink again, because that's too scary and that feels too big. And so we don't do anything. But just breaking it down and just starting with that 30 days is a great place to start.
Yes, do you have any programs or any initiatives that you're offering at this moment?
So my next alcohol-free challenge will be starting on the 7th of January, but I have a 30-day program, which is on my website, which anyone can go and start at any time at all, which is just jam-packed with so many tools and so many resources that support that 30 days off.
That's awesome. And I will also put everything in the show notes for our listeners too, who are wanting to go ahead and jump on that, because that's great. But since giving up alcohol, what has been the most surprising or transformative lessons you've actually learned about yourself?
I think it's allowed for a sense of self-connection and self-confidence to grow that I hadn't quite expected. Like I back myself more now. I trust myself more because I'm not breaking promises to myself all the time. And so when you're keeping your promises to yourself, you start to build that self-trust, and that leads to you starting to grow in the things that you take on, the projects you take on, the promotions you might go for at work, the depth of relationship that you have with your loved ones. Like all of that starts to change just from making one change of not drinking.
It's beautiful. Now, because I'm all about empowering others, what final message or piece of advice would you go ahead or would like to offer to our listeners who might be contemplating an alcohol-free life, but kind of still feels unsafe or unsure or even scared?
I think the number one thing I would say is don't try and do it on your own, because we live in a society where alcohol is celebrated, expected, marketed, and promoted everywhere we turn. And so doing it on your own just makes it twice as hard. Join a community of others that are on, what do they say? When you want to make a change, surround yourself with other people who are already making that change. So don't try and do it on your own, would be the first thing. The second thing would be start with a 30-day program, whether that's mine or someone else's, but just give yourself the chance and just see it as an experiment. Don't put pressure on yourself. Just go, I'm going to do these 30 days off. And if if your first thought is, I can't do 30 days off, then you need to do 30 days off. Like that would be the first sign that there might be a problematic relationship with alcohol, because someone who's a 1 or a 2 on that scale that I mentioned earlier, they would just be like, yeah, if I need to take 30 days off alcohol, I'll take 30 days off. Like alcohol has no priority in their life. Whereas if the first thought is, oh, but I've got that party, I've got that holiday, I've got that event, I've got that thing, I can't not drink there, then we've developed that problematic and reliance on alcohol. And that means that we probably do need to take a break, because I think you'd be very surprised at what actually changes when you do.
As life does change. And for our listeners who are interested in getting your book, you said so it's Beyond Booze. And can you just share what listeners can go ahead and expect once they actually read your book?
Yeah, so I wrote this book because I could see in the market there's a lot of sobriety books out there, but they generally fall into two categories. There's a lot of memoirs, so people's stories of quitting drinking, and then there's a lot of how to quit for 30 days. Whereas my book is all about how to create a life you love so you don't even miss or need alcohol. So it's about what to add in when we take alcohol out. So it's about physiologically what we might need to add in for our neurotransmitters in terms of nutrition and movement and stress management. There's a section on evaluating our friendships and our relationships. There's a section on what am I going to add in terms of my interests, my hobbies, my passions. There's a section on really how to identify if you are in that gray area drinking category. And it is interspersed with lots of my story and stories of the thousands of women that I've supported now. But it's a real manual and a guide. There's journaling prompts through it. There's a checklist. There's lots of interactive exercises to support you to actually go on that path of if you create a life that you love so much, you don't want or need to drink anyway. And that's what I'm really about, is empowering particularly women, because I am one myself. I know the stresses that midlife women are under. I really wanted to empower women, to give them the tools, the strategies and the resources to make alcohol insignificant in their life, because they've got a robust resource pack in their toolbox to be able to support them through life struggles.
Beautiful. Well, Sarah, any last words or anything you would like to share with our audience?
No, just please reach out to me. If you've got questions, head to my website. It's sarahrusbatch.com. I'm on Instagram, Sarah Rusbatch. I have a free members community on Facebook called the Women's Wellbeing Collective. So come say hi, reach out to me. And if you've got questions about any of my programs, I'd love to support you.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being on my show today.
Thanks for having me, Gina.